according to things that I've been informed of by my co-counsel. So we're not doing this because he's slipping up, Your Honor. We're doing it because we recognize that he's not the same guy he was that started.
Okay, let's give it another hour, see how he does. Got a note from one juror, and I'll get back to you tomorrow. I'm going to talk to the lawyers. And counsel all are present. The defendant is present. Mr. DeGuerin, you may continue to examine the witness.
Bob, I want to return for a moment to when you were arrested in Galveston in your car, the one that turned out to have Morris Black's blood in it. You had 2 guns with you then, is that right?
Yes.
Where did those guns come from?
Gun stores.
Which guns were they?
9mm and a 22.
Yeah, is the microphone turned on?
Mr. Garrett, that's not clear which arrest are you talking about? Galveston arrest or Pennsylvania arrest? Just
Galveston.
Can we clarify for the record?
Yeah, if you misunderstood me, I'm talking about when you were arrested in Galveston after you left the doctor's office, the optometrist office. How many guns did you have in the car then?
One.
Okay, just a moment ago you said 2. Why did you say 2?
I forgot that I had thrown out the 22
When had you thrown out the 22?
after Morris Black died, either that day or the next day.
Where did you throw it out?
In the garbage.
The garbage at your house?
Yes.
All right. So, when you're arrested in Galveston after leaving the doctor's office, you had the 9mm in the car with you, is that right?
Correct.
And that's a 9mm you'd bought sometime earlier up near Dallas.
Yes.
When you were arrested in Pennsylvania, you had 2 guns, right?
Yes.
Both .38 revolvers.
Yes.
Where did you get those 2 guns?
They must have been at the apartment in New Orleans.
How did they get to the apartment in New Orleans?
I must have taken them there.
Do you have a recollection of doing that?
No.
Do you know where you bought those guns?
No.
Did you take those guns with you when you left New Orleans in that car that you later took to Mobile?
Yes.
Did you leave anything in the apartment at New Orleans?
I don't think so.
There's evidence about some jewelry, a chain and a medallion that had once belonged to Davy Berman.
Yes, I thought I had taken that with me, but it turned out that I had left them there.
All right, let's talk about that for a moment. Where did you get that that jewelry?
Sarah Kaufman gave it to me sometime after Susan Berman died.
And where were you when Sarah gave that to you?
I was in Los Angeles.
Okay. Do you know if you left anything else in the apartment at New Orleans when you left there?
I imagine I did, but not much.
Did you leave any note or letter to the landlord in New Orleans?
No, I telephoned him and told him I was moving.
Okay, we were at the point where, in the sequence of events, you drove from Mobile, Alabama in the Rent-A-Wreck to the main thoroughfare that goes from New York City to Miami, correct?
Correct.
And you were going back to South Salem?
And other places where I had lived.
What was your thinking about going to South Salem?
I was thinking that I was going to kill myself, and I wanted to return to the places I had once lived.
How were you going to kill yourself?
I was going to shoot myself,
Why?
because I could not imagine being a fugitive.
South Salem was one of the places that you lived. Had you been happy at South Salem?
Yes,
Did you go to South Salem?
yes.
And what did you do there?
Well, I walked down to the lake, and then I suddenly realized that there was a woman standing about 50 feet away looking at me. So I left.
By that time, had there been news articles? Had there been news articles about you, Bob Durst, being a fugitive?
Yes,
Reminded about I didn't cover this on the jewelry that had belonged to Davy Berman. Sarah Kaufman was Susan's adopted, not really, but son, correct?
correct.
And why did he give you the little medallion that had belonged to Davy Berman?
Objection, relevant, also calls for hearsay, also calls for speculation, also lacks foundation, also irrelevant, also 352.
Let me think about each of those. Why did he give you the little medallion that belonged to Davy Berman? Sustain.
Which one?
I think that was a clean sweep, Your Honor.
So I can try to meet the objection. Which one?
Relevance.
Sorry, the only way I can communicate with my co-counsel is through text, Your Honor. I apologize.
You
Hope
may.
that's all right.
It's all right. My teenager does the same thing.
Thank you. You know, I've had to show my ID, but it's been a long time since I've been called a teenager.
It was easier when they were lying down here.
It was harder to get up, I'll tell you that. All right, Bob. So you saw a woman there at South Salem that was looking at you. What did you think about that?
Objection, relevance, 352.
Sustain.
Well, what did you do after that?
I left.
And why did you leave?
I did not want The woman was walking towards me. I did not want to talk to her.
Where did you go from there?
I don't remember.
Did you,
That's not me, Your Honor.
did you stay any place near South Salem, in a hotel or motel?
Yes, there's a strip called Route 84. It's about half an hour from South Salem, and there's a whole bunch of motels along that strip, and some fast food places.
All right, do you know which one you stayed in?
Can't think of the name of it. Something Sweets.
All right, what did you do the next day?
Well, I drove around Westchester and New York City.
Why did you do that?
I was visiting places where I had been,
Why?
because that's what I felt like doing.
All right, when did you go to Pennsylvania?
I think I stayed around South Salem and Westchester for 2 weeks, and then I drove to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, where I'd gone to college at Lehigh University.
In the 2 weeks that you were around Westchester in New York City, did you go to any other places that you were familiar with? Did you go to your brother's house?
I went to the house in Gatona where I had first lived with Kathy and Douglas and his family, which is now owned by Douglas.
Why did you go there?
Because I was going back to places where I had lived.
Okay. And then you went to Pennsylvania near where you went to Lehigh. So the jury can kind of get the picture of what's close and what's not so close. Are parts of Pennsylvania close to New York, upstate New York, and Connecticut?
Yes, it's about 2 hours from New York City to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania.
All right, what's located in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania?
Lehigh University.
Okay. Where did you go in Bethlehem?
I visited Lehigh. I stayed there 3 or 4 days
You know where you stayed?
at a motel called Staybridge.
Okay. And then when did you, what happened next?
I was arrested for shoplifting.
All right, let's talk about that for a moment. Can you compare the Wegmans where you were arrested to perhaps some supermarket in LA that it compares to?
Ralph's.
Ralph's?
If we're talking about LA, I would say it's very similar to a Ralph's.
And for the record, is that a large grocery store that has lots of things in it?
Yes.
at the time of your arrest, you had shaved your head completely and shaved your eyebrows. When did you do that?
Before I left Mobile, Alabama,
Why did you do that?
so that I would not look recognizable.
Like what?
I would not be recognized if someone saw a photograph of me the way I used to be.
Okay. Let's go to the Wegmans, and actually, that was Bath, wasn't it? Pennsylvania, Wegmans?
Yes,
And again, for the record and for the jury, are there a number of small towns that all seem to merge together in that area?
yes. Bethlehem, Allentown, a couple of others.
Okay. What time was it when you went into the Wegmans?
Probably around noon.
Did you park in the parking lot?
Yeah,
How much money did you have, cash money then, in the car?
40,000 more or less dollars.
How much did you have in your pocket?
500, I believe.
And so you went into the Wegmans. What did you do?
I got coffee in the New York Times and I read the New York Times.
Did you pay for those?
Yes,
And what else did you do?
that's what I did, then I left.
Well, did you steal a Band-Aid?
I did, and a sandwich.
What was the Band-Aid for?
I had cut myself while I was shaving
Where did you cut yourself? Where on your
on
butt?
my lip.
Did you put the Band-Aid on your lip?
I did,
And you also took a sandwich?
yes.
What about a Wall Street Journal?
I did not take a Wall Street Journal.
What all did you take?
That was it, the Band-Aids and the sandwich.
Why didn't you pay for it, Bob?
I don't know.
You had enough money?
I had ample money.
How far did you get out of the store before you were stopped?
10 feet.
What happened when you were stopped?
A girl and a boy came over and said, "We're with security. You have to come with us so we can get some information."
Were they polite to you?
Say that again.
Were they polite to you?
Yes.
So what did you do?
I went with them to their office.
Did you ask to go to your car?
Yes.
Why?
I wanted to leave.
Of course. You had 2 guns in the car, didn't you?
Yes.
They were fully loaded.
I assume they were.
Did they ask you for identification?
They did. I said it's in the car.
Why did you say it was in the car?
I had rented the car using Morris Black's license. Morris Black's license was in the car.
But didn't you give your name as Bob Durst?
I gave my name as Morris Black.
Well, you've heard the testimony here that of the 2 officers, the security, that said you were Bob Durst.
I said I was Bob Durst after they took me to the office and started asking me questions.
All right. There's also an officer who said that he confronted you with asking you when the last time you were in Texas. You remember that?
I do very well.
So what did you think when that happened?
I thought I'm caught.
Where did you go from there?
I was arrested.
Yes.
They took me to jail.
Did you then begin to meet with lawyers, including myself, in the jail in Pennsylvania?
Yes.
And did you eventually determine who you wanted to be on your defense team?
Yes.
How long were you in Pennsylvania before you were transferred to Texas, to Galveston?
About 6 weeks.
When you got to Texas and to Galveston, was there any bail set?
There was no bail.
All right, during the time between when you reached Galveston and when the trial started almost 2 years later, how much later was the trial after you got to Galveston?
About 2 years.
And were you in jail during all that time?
Yes.
Did you have visitors?
Yes.
There's been something in evidence here that we're calling, it's been called the BD story. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Did you have that in your possession later on in a series of boxes that you turned over to somebody?
I think that came from Emily Altman.
I'm not asking you that yet. I'm asking you if you had that in some boxes that someone was holding for you.
Not to my knowledge.
Did you know it was in the boxes that you told Susie Giordano to turn over to to Jarecki?
I had no idea. I had never seen it before.
How many boxes did you have Susie Giordano turn over to Andrew Jarecki
62.
and later to the police?
When Jarecki handed some of the stuff over to the police.
Now that's much later, correct?
That's much, much later.
All right, let's get back to Galveston. How long was your trial in Galveston?
Six weeks.
The jury found you not guilty, correct?
Correct.
Did you testify in your own behalf?
I did.
Did you have a better recollection then of the events than you do now?
Definitely.
Before the trial started, was there a time when when you gave handwriting exemplars to some officers that came out from Los Angeles?
Yes.
Had you told anybody then that you had found Susan's body and written that note? At that time, had you told anybody?
No.
All right. After the jury's verdict, were you released from jail?
No.
What happened after the jury's verdict?
Well, the jury acquitted me of murder, but I was still held on the charges, 2 counts of bail jumping and 1 count of tampering with evidence.
All right. We've briefly gone over that. Did you plead guilty to those charges?
I did.
By that time, how long had you been in jail?
3 years and a couple of months.
And what was your sentence?
5 years.
Was that a sentence that was agreed upon between you and your lawyers and the prosecutors in Galveston?
Yes.
And did you begin to serve that sentence, or did you have credit enough to discharge that sentence?
I had sufficient credit to be eligible for parole.
All right. And when you were eligible for parole, did you make parole?
The day before I was to be released on parole, I was charged with gun charges by the federal government.
Where?
I was still in Galveston.
Yes, but where were the charges, the federal gun charges? Where did you have to go to court over that?
The federal gun charges were in what's called the northeastern region, specifically in Philadelphia. When I was first transferred from Galveston County Jail to the U.S. Marshals, and I was told that I was going to be tried in Philadelphia. I thought they had made a mistake because I'd only been in Philadelphia twice in my life, and I knew I had not committed any crimes. It turned out that the federal charges were for when I first fled Galveston and went to Pennsylvania. I had the guns in the car, and I was charged with being a fugitive and carrying a gun across state lines, and I was charged with being a felon and traveling across state lines with a gun.
Eventually, did you resolve those charges by pleading guilty?
I pled guilty to those charges and accepted a sentence of 9 months in the Federal Bureau of Prisons.
And did you go to prison, federal prison?
I went to federal prison in Fairton, New Jersey. I had already served about 3.5 months in Houston, whatever they call it. detention center. The word for jail, if it's a federal sentence, is detention center. So I had served 4 months in federal detention center when I pled guilty to the gun charges and accepted a sentence of 9 months and was sent to the Federal Correctional Institution in Fairton, New Jersey.
Okay, did you serve your sentence out there?
Objection 352, Your Honor.
Yes,
I'll allow that answer.
Okay, so you served your sentence out there, and then what happened?
I was released July 15th, 2005 on federal probation. So from July 15th, 2005 until the 5 years was up, at the end of November 2006, I was out of prison but on probation.
How long did you stay on probation?
Objection relevance for 352.
Sustained.
All right, eventually, were you free? Were you without any
At
restraints?
the end of November 2006, I was finished with both state of Texas parole and Federal Bureau of Prison probation.
All right. Then were you free to go where you wanted? This is now 2000, end of 2006, right?
Yes,
Were you free then to go where you wanted?
yes,
So where did you go to live after 2006?
Houston.
Where did you first live in Houston?
I don't remember the numbers on Cushing Street.
A rental or a purchase?
It was a townhouse that I bought.
How long did you live there? And wait a minute, let me back up. Did you have any other residences that you could go to at that time?
No,
What had happened with San Francisco?
I had sold everything.
Does that also include the Battery Park apartment
Yes,
and the house that you had in?
Connecticut. Yes, Debbie Chariton sold everything for me.
All right. And so now you have a townhouse that you bought in Houston. Was that to be a permanent place for you?
I stayed there for a year and then bought a condominium at 2520 Robin Hood Street in Houston, and I still own that condominium.
In the meantime, had you had what you consider to be problems with being Bob Durst?
I decided I did not want to live in Houston full time, and I went to New York and attempted to buy a co-op, but I was rejected by co-op boards.
Now, let's examine that for a moment.
Objection relevance 352.
Sustained.
I can show the if we can have a sidebar.
I don't think so. Go to a different subject. If it's important, you could pick it up tomorrow. After the sidebar.
Did you attempt to buy any other places?
Los Angeles.
All right, tell us about Los Angeles.
I was rejected by 2 condominium boards, and then I was accepted at a building at 1100 Alta Drive in West Hollywood.
Okay. 1100 Alta Loma Drive. What part of Los Angeles is that?
West Hollywood.
Or 352 both.
He's answered the same question twice, it can remain. West Hollywood, West Hollywood.
On objection 352, this line of questioning, Your Honor.
I suspect I will, but we'll see. Let's hear the question.
Did you live at Alta Loma?
Objection.
Yes.
Relevance 352.
I'll allow that, but
How long did you live there?
Objection, relevance 352.
sustain.
I lived there.
Wait. Where did you move from, where did you go from Alta Loma?
Well, I owned Alta Loma when I was arrested this time around in New Orleans.
All right, had you lived any other places in Los Angeles in the meantime?
When I first got to Los Angeles, I rented a condominium on Maple Drive, 330 Maple Drive, I believe.
Is that in Beverly Hills?
Yes,
All right. How long did you live there?
I think a little less than a year.
Your Honor, could we have an offer approved, maybe at sidebar regarding the relevance of, I don't want to object every question, but
No, I will, I'll scrutinize the questions. Can object. It's all right.
I want to change the subject for a moment and talk about Nick Chavin. When did you first meet Nick Chavin?
Susan Berman introduced me to him in 1980.
Where?
Susan Berman called me at the office and said a friend of hers from San Francisco, a musician, was in town, and he had free tickets to a Doobie Brothers concert, and that I should go to a certain street corner at 6 o'clock or whatever, and there would be a bus there with Doobie Brothers on the front of it, and my name would be on a list.
So did you go to the Doobie Brothers concert?
I did. Susan said, "This is Nick Chavin," and Nick Chavin offered me a joint.
We're just right out of the box, first thing.
It was already lit.
Okay. Was it good?
I don't remember.
Maybe it was good. All right, what happened from there? Did you develop a friendship with Nick Chavin?
Yes, I did.
How close was your friendship with Nick Chavin?
It got to be pretty close. He was trying to make a name for himself in advertising, and he was with a firm that did real estate advertising. My kind of business, you don't do much advertising. Nobody decides when they see an ad that they want to go out and rent 20,000 feet of office space. So you do almost zero advertising.
So let me stop you there. We're talking about in 1980, was the situation regarding real estate advertising different in 1980 than it is, say, today?
To the best of my knowledge, it's the same.
What kind of advertising was Nick Chavin in the business of selling?
Well, my family was getting ready to build its first new office building in 15 years. The last time they had built something was in 1966. Now it was 1980. All those years, New York had big problems all through the 70s. When you build a new building, the only advertising you do is you put together a brochure, and some of the brochures get to be very fancy, and you mail it out to the brokers who handle leasing office space. At that time, there were a total of about 150 brokers with about 20 different firms who handled all the office space in Manhattan. I introduced Nick to my Uncle David, who was going to make the decision on what advertising agency we were going to use to prepare our brochure.
Was the preparation of those brochures, was that a major investment?
Several $100,000.
Meaning for Nick Chavin and his firm, what kind of business would that be?
His firm would far prefer to represent people building residential buildings because there's lots more advertising that you can do for apartments and condominiums.
But at any rate, when you introduced Nick Chavin to your Uncle David, did they make a deal?
Yes, I expected David would like Nick, and David did like Nick. And I think there were 3 others who were competing for it, and David chose Nick.
What importance over the years was that introduction that you made for Nick to your Uncle David? What importance was it for Nick?
Nick testified that it was very important because if he could tell people that he had a Durst account, it would make it much easier for him to get other accounts.
All right.
And Nick was quite successful for a little while.
So, in the years that followed, did Nick maintain business with the Durst organization?
Yes.
In fact,
There
even up.
wasn't-
Go ahead.
There was not much business, but he stayed friendly with both me and David, and he got to be pretty friendly with my father, Seymour.
Well, I guess the only way to ask it is, was that a valuable contact for Nick to have that relationship with
Yes,
with the Durst organization?
that's what Nick said.
Okay, you recall in this trial, part of the evidence that the jury has heard was a telephone conversation between Nick Chavin and Mr. Lewin. on July the 23rd, 2015. I believe that's the date.
I'm not sure I'm remembering what you're talking about.
Okay, well, I'll move on to something else then.
But I'm curious now. Was I recorded talking to Nick Chavin?
No, this was, what I'm referring to was a recording of Mr. Lewin interrogating Nick Chavin.
Oh, okay.
I said 2015.
You're not going to object to the term interrogating? It's not a correct term.
All right, I guess it's a bit argumentative. Restate it.
Okay, Mr. Lewin asking leading questions of Mr. Chavin.
Same objection.
I knew that would
Sustain.
work. Mr. Lewin talking to Nick Chavin on the telephone and recording it,
No objection to that one.
stipulated. So, and I said 2015, it might have been 2017, and I might be corrected, but at any rate, it's the it's a conversation that was played within a conversation.
Well, I'm not remembering it.
Okay, we'll come back to it.
Mr. Guerin, just so the jury's not confused, you said 723, 15 and 723, 17. Can we have a stipulation that the conversation was 723, 15?
That's right.
I was asking for clarification, yes.
It's clarified then.
Well, we'll come back to it.
Okay.
So, was there a period of time when you didn't see Nick Chavin for several years?
1992 until 2014.
Okay, so from 1992 to 2014, did you have any contact whatsoever with Nick Chavin?
No,
Where was he during that time, if you know?
I assume he was in New York.
And do you know whether he still had business with the Durst organization during that time?
I know that he did.
Okay. And where were you during that time?
Say that again.
Where were you during that time?
1992, I moved from New York City to Humboldt County, and I stayed there until 1999. And in 1999, I started spending full time in the New York area at either an apartment I owned in Battery Park City or a house that I owned in a New York City suburb called Ridgefield, Connecticut.
But you had no contact with him during that time, right?
No, none.
When did Nick Chavin get married?
1988,
Where did he get married?
Las Vegas.
Did you go to his wedding?
I was a co-best man,
Who was the other best man?
Kiki Friedman.
Was Susan there?
Susan was there.
What about Susan's father? I don't mean Susan's father, I'm sorry, Nick's father.
Yes, Nick's father, Mr. Chavin, was there.
Was there something that happened there that strained your relationship with Nick Chavin? Do you understand the question? And just
I understand the question.
without answering what it was there such a thing?
The answer is yes.
And did it involve Susan Berman and Nick and Nick's father?
It did.
In that dispute, whose side did you take?
Susan Berman's.
Did that cause some bad blood between you and Nick?
It did.
So how long after that was it when you next saw Nick Chavin?
1988, we continued to be friendly, but we were not very good friends.
Was it partly because of what had happened in Las Vegas with Susan and his father?
Primarily what happened in Las Vegas, but also I think the friendship was winding down anyway. I would see him when he went to my office to meet with David about something or other, but we would not hang out that much.
You were still, in the early 90s, still having some business or still going to the office at the Durst organization, correct?
Yes, until 1992.
But did you have any business with Nick at the Durst organization during that time?
No,
His business was with whom?
David.
All right. And then there was a period of time when you just didn't see him at all.
Yes, 1992 to 2014.
So that's 20 plus years that you didn't have anything to do with Nick?
Correct.
So, that gets us, as far as Nick is concerned, up to 2014, and I think that your testimony was you were living in several different places between 2006 and 2014. So let's get to where you were living in 2014.
Primarily, between 2008 and 2014, I spent most of my time at 1100 Altaloma in West Hollywood. I owned a condominium in Baggers Park City in Manhattan, and I owned a house in Ridgefield, Connecticut, and I would spend some time there.
What was it that got you and Nick back together after such a long time, 20 plus years of not seeing each other?
Nick Chavin's wife, Terry Chavin, worked for my wife, Deborah Charitan, for about 3 years. I think she had just resigned, but Terry Chavin, contacted my wife, Deborah Charitan, and said the four of us should get together and have dinner.
Did the four of you ever get together?
No,
But did you and Nick get together?
took about 6 months And since the girls weren't coming, I told Nick that if he wanted to have dinner, he would have to come to my neighborhood, which was Harlem, where I had bought a townhouse. Terry Chavin was the broker for the townhouse that I bought on 121st Street and Lenox Boulevard.
And that's in Harlem?
Yes,
Harlem is one of the boroughs of New York, but it's north of Manhattan, right?
it's part of Manhattan. It's the northern part of Manhattan.
Okay. All right. At that time, we're talking about 2014, had you been dealing with Andrew Jarecki and his assistants or crew at
Yes, I had contacted Andrew Jarecki by telephone in 2010.
all right. I want to get to that and start asking you about that. You mentioned that you'd been turned down for a condominium. And you also mentioned that you tried to buy a couple of condominiums in Los Angeles.
I'm not hearing you.
You mentioned that you had been rejected by some condominium boards.
In Los Angeles, I was rejected by 6 of them.
Were you told the reason?
Objection.
Sustained.
Did you have an experience in Houston with attempting to purchase a condominium under your name?
Objection, relevant to 52.
Sustained.
We're at the point where you decide to contact Andrew Jarecki. And I want to go into that, but I think we have to have a chambers conference before we do that.
Can we?
Yes.
Any other subject you can cover?
Well, that's where I'm going.
Well, then I'll let the jurors go for the day. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll pick up tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Do not converse among yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected with this case. Do not form or express any opinion on the case, and we'll see you tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. You propose to elicit from the witness.
Dick, I just want to remind the court that Mr. DeGuerin is starting to go into the jinx, and these questions about the rejections at the different properties
Yes?
is the reason, in part, that Mr. Durst wanted to get somebody to put out his version of events, because he was tired of being treated like a pariah everywhere he went.
Okay, he can say that.
But can he include the fact that he had actual reasons, which were people were saying you can't live here?
It's marginal that he can explain
I don't have
why
no
he was
objection.
motivated. I'm sorry.
Okay, no objection.
I was going to say, Ron, I'm just trying to make it easy. That's where they're going.
You're making it easy, but it's I think it's an undue consumption of time.
Okay. I was just trying to help, Your Honor.
Well,
Thank you for helping. He can say it. You've established that he wasn't welcome at 6 different condos. He's a pariah. We get it.
But, Your Honor,
Yeah.
it's clear to you, you've been in this case for how many years? I think if we take an extra 2 minutes in the course of the 5 months for Mr. DeGuerin to elicit that, we won't be causing undue delay, so. I'll
All right,
apply.
it's the 2 minutes added to lots of other 2 minutes, but, all right, you can have 2 minutes.
I can't say my name in 2 minutes, so it's gonna be a little bit longer, 2 minutes.
Oh, well, yeah, the offer is 2 minutes, so I'll go with 2 minutes.
Well, he made the offer, I didn't.
Well, you don't have to say your name, do you?
Dick, he doesn't mean, I didn't mean it literally,
Yeah, I
and the
know.
judge understands that. Okay.
2 lawyer minutes, that's fine.
There you, Brad, now we're talking.
I get it. All right, now, what is it about, is that it? Is that the whole thing?
Well, there was some other issues that Mr. DeGuerin wanted to elicit about about Jarecki and the jinx, which we thought we would address with you when you discussed the jury question with us. We don't have to do it on the record.
Okay, and we'll put it on the record later, depending on it, if we have to. Now, we have a jury, I want to talk to you about scheduling and a juror's availability, so let me adjourn, we'll put it on the record tomorrow morning if we need to. All right?
Okay.
Department,
Oh.
yes, what?
Oh, you don't want to talk about the juror now?
I do in chambers.
Oh, in chambers, okay.
Yes,
Didn't
okay.
understand.
Department 1 is adjourned.